Mainline steam seems to be under constant threat. Less than a year ago, the impending withdrawal of locomotive-hauled trains on the former Southern Main Line through Salisbury to Exeter seemed to herald the demise of regular steam running. The new turbo units and a new timetable are now in operation. Yet, steam seems set to continue. A Bullet Pacific on Sherborne Bank on April the 10th, 1993. Such classic scenes may now continue into the foreseeable future. This is Steam Video Volume 8. In this issue, news, including Blue Peter on the Scarborough lines. L plate on the footplate, the chance to get to the controls of an A4 Pacific. Steam across the Fens, a study of the return of steam to the flat lands of the eastern counties. Steam in Lakeland, the Lakeside and Haverthwaite Railway. K1 to Eastgate, the end of the Weardale branch, or the start of a new era of steam in the shadow of the Pennines. The Llangollen Railway. David Wilcock looks at a line which is going from strength to strength. And Steam Showcase, the best steam photography from the best cameramen. The spring has seen more steam running along the former London and South Western Main Line to Salisbury and Yeovil. On the 20th of March, Britannia set out from Eastleigh en route for Yeovil Junction. She's seen here on the first leg of her run on the single-track line through Chandler's Ford. Steam running, based at Salisbury, was the brainchild of area manager Gerald Daniels back in the mid-1980s. The steeply graded and scenic former Southern Main Line to Exeter had dispensed with regular steam running in 1964. Three weeks after Britannia's run came a familiar shape in the form of 34027 Tor Valley. The Bullet operated from Andover to Yeovil Junction, from where a night run was made back to Waterloo. The turntable at Yeovil was last used for steam operations in the mid-1960s. It remained in use in connection with engineering requirements until 1985, when steam specials started running to and from Yeovil. The introduction of faster schedules in May using new turbo trains was thought to prevent the running of steam. In the event, further specials are planned for the autumn of 1993. Another steam route hasn't fared so well with the introduction of new trains and working practices. On a damp and dreary day in January 1985, 4498 Sir Nigel Gresley made a historic first ascent of Saunderton Bank en route for Stratford-upon-Avon. In equally dreary conditions, many of the same photographers gathered to witness the final ascent of Saunderton. 7100 Duke of Gloucester had originated from Ealing and was en route for Stratford-upon-Avon. This marks a sad finale to one of the great events of the post-1968 steam era. The reason for its demise? BR have introduced driver-only operation to the route. From the start of the new timetable, there will be no guards available for these and other locomotive hauled duties. For the first time for 3 years, steam has returned to Scarborough, albeit as a one-off event. A jointly run tour by Nelpeg and the Scottish Railway Preservation Society ran from Edinburgh to York and was steam-hauled into Scarborough by Blue Peter. The turntable at Scarborough was installed at great expense for the running of specials. The end of steam was greeted by a storm of controversy. The last steam special to pass under the classic signal gantry was back in May 1989, when Green Arrow worked to and from York. Today, this represents the largest structure of this type on BR. Another special is scheduled for the Scarborough line later in the season. The Tuesday after the Easter bank holiday saw a highly successful multi-engine spectacular based on Llandudno Junction. For the first time in preservation, no less than 3 Stania Pacifics were brought together for a day of steam running. 6201 Princess Elizabeth and 46203 Princess Margaret Rose wait while Duchess of Hamilton moves forward to work a train to Holyhead. This event stood in stark contrast to the poorly patronized specials to Holyhead of last year. It received infinitely more publicity. The appearance of 3 Pacifics seemed to capture both the imagination of public and enthusiast alike. Indeed, the crowds on Llandudno station proved a major problem and prevented many of the passengers seeing the assembled Pacifics. The coaching stock had arrived from Crewe earlier, behind 6201. 46229 would work the train to Holyhead and back. Steam running is now a rarity along this route. The Duchess returns to Llandudno. From Llandudno, 46203 would return the train to Crewe. This locomotive had, incidentally, been the subject of some frantic last-minute repairs. This first in preservation was a close-run thing. Brunel's 188th birthday was marked in April by the renaming and numbering of 5029 Nunney Castle as 5069 Isambard Kingdom Brunel. The real 5069 was, in fact, cut up at Swindon 31 years ago. The castle is seen at Sheffield just before operating as special to Didcot. The renumbering of popular performers like Britannia and Nunney Castle is providing the steam scene with some welcome variety. From a castle in disguise to a king as original. 6024 King Edward I operated the Pathfinder 7Y mini excursion from Gloucester to Newport and Hereford and return. The king is seen on the return run from Hereford. The threat to locomotive and, in particular, steam haulage to the Settle and Carlisle has eased with the assurance from regional railways that the route will not be downgraded. The Duchess heads south on a Cumbrian Mountain Limited bound for Bradford. Late March saw 6201 teamed with a maroon-liveried BN91 rake of coaches for a southbound run. A Royal Scot headboard completed the scene. The Princess is due, incidentally, to make her last mainline run in June with the expiry of her BR mainline certificate. IVAT 260, number 46441, made a test run from Derby on the 22nd of April. This Carnforth loco was due to make its mainline debut at Blackpool a few days later on the 1st of May. Sadly, a dispute with Intercity prevented this appearance. With the successful steaming of 46441, there are no less than 3 of these IVAT Mickey Mouse Class 2s passed for mainline work. Another performer on the Sheffield test circuit was Ian Storey's Black 5 number 44767. The locomotive had just undergone major tender repairs. The ranks of the motive power which has made the test run on the Derby-Sheffield circuit may be joined at some time in the future by a classic LNWR design. Presenter and record producer Pete Waterman has agreed to underwrite the restoration to mainline condition of the National Railway Museum's Super D. In March, the 080 was moved into the main hall of York Museum. Prior to this, the locomotive had been on display at Butterley. On Friday, March the 19th, the Swanage Railway hosted a first in preservation when 2 streamlined Bullard Pacifics double-headed a photographer-sponsored train. The event was blessed with crystal clear conditions. 257 Squadron and Swanage were teamed with a utility van and green liveried coaches, a perfect combination in perfect weather. The Drummond T9 has made its last runs prior to withdrawal for a major overhaul and restoration to mainline standards by 1994. On the 7th of May 1993, the 440 made what was heralded as its penultimate run. Unusually, the loco was turned and faced boiler first into Swanage. Number 120 ran tender first to Harmon's Cross, from where the T9 propelled 2 coaches to Townsend Field, a half a mile from Corfe Castle. Today this is only a stock movement and the train is empty of passengers. When regular running commences, the line into Corfe Castle will allow some classic steam photography. The problems faced by preservationists are illustrated no more clearly than this. These cracking concrete supports have brought the Sittingbourne and Kemsley Light Railway to the brink of closure. Half a mile in length, this 60-year-old structure links the railway with the terminus in Sittingbourne and has now been closed, pending a decision on repairs. In happier times, a steam service operates on the 2-foot 6-inch gauge line. Despite the end of steam running through the Chilterns to Stratford-upon-Avon, this location will continue to remain firmly on the steam map. The specials to Didcot seem as popular as ever. Britannia departs for Didcot.
David Owen, Chief Mechanical Engineer at Llangollen Railway. Quite a scoop for the railway, getting Union of South Africa, A4 Pacific on this little railway here in a Welsh valley. Why is Llangollen doing these driver experience turns? What are we trying to gain from it?
Primarily, the idea being to cover the costs of transportation, hire charge. Everything gets so expensive, and in the end of the day, we've got to make the thing cost effective. Now we're charging £125 for these driver training sessions. We're probably making a fair bit of profit out of it, and in the end of the day it all gets ploughed back into the railway. But the imperative thing is that we cover the costs of these transportation charges, otherwise the whole thing becomes a non-starter.
Now, bringing number 9 down from Fife as a replacement for Flying Scotsman, which I think most people know, the superheater flue tubes have gone, the railway couldn't use it. What's it cost to bring number 9 down from Fife?
About £4,500. That's down from Fife and then back across to Nottingley for the BR Open Day in somewhere by Leeds. We certainly will cover those costs.
The railway gets the A4 for about 3.5 weeks. Will you cover your costs and perhaps make a few bob as well?
I think at the end of the day, if we can cover the costs, make a little bit of profit out of it, then I think we'll all be well pleased.
And after the A4 goes, will you carry on doing these driver experience turns? Is this the start of a long-running series now?
Well, certainly having done driver experience training courses for 4 weeks now, we can sit back and have a look and see where we've gone right or wrong, and then possibly come up with a programme where we can carry on doing them through the summer.
Is it realistic to think that the railway can make more money from driver experience than it can from ordinary passenger trains? Are you into that scenario yet?
Well, certainly off-peak, the answer to that is probably yes, we could make more money on driver experience. But in the summer, July's and August, then it's certainly far more profit in running the service.
Isn't Llangollen just sort of jumping on the bandwagon that 1 or 2 other railways have started?
Probably yes.
Yeah.
Here we are in one of the most hallowed places you can find in all of Great Britain, the footplate of an A4 Pacific. And this gentleman in front of me here, Alvy Finder, is having his first ever footplate ride as driver of this locomotive, having paid £125 for the privilege. Believe me, it's value for money. In a moment they're going to let me have a go up there, get my hand on the regulator, my £125.
It's a piece of cake, but seriously, it's very different driving a light engine up and down Llangollen Railway to driving 100 mile an hour expresses between King's Cross and Edinburgh. I have to say, having had a little go here, I'm utterly filled with admiration at what's been created here. What a locomotive, what a designer, and I've only hardly got out of first gear with it. Very responsive to the brake, much less certain on the regulator, but what an experience. I heartily recommend it to anybody. Have a go, you'll love it.
The Eastern Counties. Flat. Featureless. And, in terms of steam, a forgotten backwater. Steam finished early, with dieselisation making inroads throughout Lincolnshire and East Anglia in the late 50s, early 60s. Boston in 1962. This was, at the time, a station on the main line to Grimsby. These workings remained well away from the spotlight, and few photographers ventured east of the East Coast main line. A holiday train bound for Skegness from the Midlands enters the north-facing loop. Skegness and Mablethorpe retained steam haulage on summer-dated trains until as late as 1963. 26 years later, and regular steam was to return to Eastern Metals. 1989, and the Derby to Lincoln line played host to, among other engines, Black 5 44932. 2 years later, in October 1991, the King's Lynn to Cambridge line featured a remarkable weekend of steam running. This was just prior to the energising of the electrification scheme. Another date, and another milestone. This time it was the turn of the Skegness line. On the 29th of March 1993, Standard Tank 80080 ran a test train from Nottingham to Skegness. At Thorpe Calvert, the first steam for 3 decades passes the classic somersault signal just beyond the crossing. This is one of several surviving Great Northern signals on a line which, in places, has changed little since the days of steam. The train conveyed a special saloon for a number of invited guests. At Skegness, the run round was accomplished quickly, and the train returned to Boston and Nottingham. The first public run to Skegness came on the 10th of April. The packed 9-coach train was to make an out-and-back run, totalling 160 miles. The only hiccup was a delay watering the engine at Skegness. With no turning facilities, the return run was made bunker first. Several repeat runs of the Jolly Fisherman are planned during the summer. With the tourist and day trip potential, let's hope this becomes a regular event in the steam calendar. (1993) has also seen steam running on the Ely to Bishop Stortford section of the electrified King's Lynn main line. A total of 6 shuttles each day were operated over the weekend of the 17th and 18th of April. Motive power came in the form of Britannia and Duke of Gloucester. Locos were turned on the Stansted Airport Triangle. We're heading north towards Ely. The 3 Counties Steam Weekend was organised by Network South East to commemorate the 150th anniversary of the railway from Bishop Stortford to Newport on the line to Cambridge. Steam operation under the wires was approved by BR on the basis that this was a one-off event. The last steam event on this route was operated by Britannia, Tor Valley and Flying Scotsman. Since then, Ely has lost its semaphores and the station and its approaches have been extensively remodelled. At Ely, 70,000 is detached and Duke of Gloucester takes over for the return run. The Duke is accelerating away from Ely. When the King's Lynn line was electrified late in 1991, few thought steam would ever return. These scenes prove there is life under the wires.
In 1869, the Furness Railway opened the 7 miles and 73 chains branch from Lakeside to Plumpton Junction. Then, Haverthwaite was about halfway along and handled a surprising variety of goods traffic. Through this tunnel, loads of pig iron, gunpowder, pit props and ultramarine were carried. You can still see traces of the old works close to the railway. The Dolly Blue, or ultramarine factory, is now part of a hotel. And here are the remains of the ironworks, which closed in 1967, taking the branch with it. Rescue plans were drawn up to save the whole line, but local government at the time was unsympathetic. In the event, only the upper 3.5 miles could be saved, and this was reopened by Bishop Eric Tracy on the 2nd of May 1973. So today, Haverthwaite is the end of the line, and with the A590 trunk road occupying the trackbed here and at Greenhod, reconnection with the BR network looks impossible. Well, if you can't connect to a mainline rail network, how about a steamboat service? The Furness built Lakeside Quay to compete with the London and North Western Railway, who had a connection to steamers at Bowness, on the other side of the lake. Lakeside's deeper water allows bigger vessels like the Swan to berth here. She was launched at Lakeside in 1938, when the line was still in its heyday. Little of the once grand station survives. The overall roof lasted until 1978, when it was declared unsafe by the BR Property Board, owners of the site. But the slipway and signal box are virtually unchanged in 55 years. Small industrial locos have been the mainstay of operations for the past few years, and on this line they must work hard for their keep. Departure from Haverthwaite is on a difficult 1 in 70 gradient. On exit from the Haverthwaite East Tunnel, the gradient eases to 1 in 120, but the sharp curve with 6 inches of cant keeps up the strain on the drawbar. After Newby Bridge, the line gently descends towards Lakeside, and the crew can relax a little and enjoy the beautiful lakeland scenery. In addition to the industrials, there are also 3 XBR locomotives at Haverthwaite. This Collet 56XX class 062 is expected to re-enter traffic within 2 to 3 years. The pride of the locomotive fleet, the 2 Fairbairn 264 tanks. Once regular performers here, they have been undergoing major overhaul for several years. In June, number 42085 is scheduled to re-enter service on the line. The Lakeside and Haverthwaite has come to terms with rail isolation. Instead, effort has been put into improving amenities at Haverthwaite and into providing efficient connections with the Lake Windermere steamboats. The railway already holds much interest in its history and in its location. The return of the Fairbairn tanks can only further enhance the attraction of this lovely Lakeland line.
The freight sector has seen a dramatic decline in recent years. In January, the Redmire branch in the northeast of England succumbed to the axe. Then, in March, the neighbouring branch to the cement works at Eastgate also closed to freight traffic. This freight-only line ran west from Bishop's Auckland along the Weardale Valley as far as the Blue Circle cement terminal at Eastgate, which is near to the original terminus at Weir Head. The last steam locomotive to traverse the line was in the form of K1 number 62005, which is now preserved by Nelpeg as 2005. It seemed appropriate that the same engine should make a farewell run along the line before final closure by BR. On the morning of the 28th of March, the first of 2 trains leaves Darlington. Destination, Eastgate. Several miles later, and a rather different railway, we're on the final section of the line into the terminus. The ending of freight traffic and the consequent increase in road haulage has galvanized the local community. Councillor Cunningham of the Weir Valley Council explains the action now being taken.
Set up negotiations with British Rail with the help of all the other bodies with regard to saving the whole of the line from Stanhope through to Darlington. In particular, British Rail inform us that there is a 3-mile stretch of line between Bishop Auckland and Witten Park that is in excellent condition, and they would like to see that line up as quickly as possible. We need to delay that as much as possible. The attraction of the steam event today would hopefully lead to other attractions. Today has been an excellent day. We're overwhelmed with the support. The line has been absolutely covered with people right away through from Darlington up to Eastgate, and it's been an excellent day.
In fact, the sheer number of people on the line side almost overwhelmed the train at times. The appearance of 2005 achieved more than just marking the end of the branch. It served to focus attention on the fate of yet another freight line.
Well, there you have it, a train typical of the kind of train the Llangollen Railway was running 12 years ago when it first started operating a passenger service. A little industrial 060, 2 suburban passenger coaches. It's almost becoming a rarity in preservation now as the move towards bigger motive power with the restoration of more ex-Barry locomotives comes on stream. We're seeing fewer and fewer of this kind of typical train, which is where railway preservation first began. The first trains to arrive in Llangollen were in 1861 when the Vale of Llangollen Railway arrived here from Rhuaben. The following year came the arrival of passenger trains, 1862, and then there was a pause. The railway actually stopped here for about another 5 years before the through route was opened through to Corwin, which is the railway's ultimate destination today. Passenger trains ran for very nearly 100 years here through to 1964. Finishing in December 1964, actually a month earlier than was scheduled. The line was to have closed to passengers in January 65, but because of flooding down the line at Glendovely, the line was put out of action, and the final services were actually run by a bus. Llangollen has been a popular destination for many years on account of the International Eisteddfod, which is held here every July. And the platforms were extended in the 1950s to take 10-coach train lengths, excursion trains coming from both east and westerly directions. And just to give an indication of the kind of excursions that were run then, you could catch a train from Barmouth to Llangollen and back for the Eisteddfod for 9 shillings and threepence. In 1975, when the Llangollen Railway Society first came here, this station was just a wilderness of weeds and scrub and mature trees, and a very substantial campaign to clear the trackbed over the first 3/4 of a mile was undertaken. And this was helped in 1977 when Shell donated about a mile of track, which enabled the volunteers to lay the first 3/4 of a mile over the next 4 years between 1977 and 1981, to lay the first 3/4 of a mile of track to Pentrafelin, which is a way around the corner there out of sight. That took the railway to the brink of the D Bridge, which is one of the major engineering structures on the line, and passenger services were instituted in 1981. Well, the expression dignity and impudence springs to mind. The impudence of a little 060 saddle tank, the dignity of the mainline A4 Pacific waiting on the opposite platform to start today's driver experience runs. Interesting, the Kitson was already doing its job of work in industry when the A4 was agleam in Sir Nigel Gresley's eye. Like any developing railway, Llangollen has had to use what motive power has been available to it, and it hasn't always been able to pick and choose what it can use. But it has been reasonably successful in being faithful to Great Western Railway philosophy. The flagship engine of the railway, 7822 Foxcote Manor, an ex-Barry locomotive which has been in use down here now for some years, and the railway is currently restoring for use later on this year an ex-Great Western Railway, an ex-National Coal Board pannier tank, number 7754. Other Great Western tank locomotives, fairly typical of the line, have been in use here on a regular basis on hire from other railways. 1466 from Didcot, 5572 from Didcot, 7760 from Birmingham Railway Museum, to pick out just a few. Well, there are scenic railways and there are scenic railways, but how about this? The River Dee and Berwyn Station up here on a ledge about 60 or 70 foot up from the level of the river. There can be few locations like this on preserved railways of quite this magnificence. A classic location, a very popular one with photographers today and back in the old days of steam. This station was a derelict ruin for about 18 years between the closure of the line and the reopening in 1986. Well, the magnificent scenery of the Dee Valley manifests here once again on the curve of the line at Glyndubwy, right alongside the River Dee. This was scrubland trackbed until summer 1990, and the line was relayed into Glyndubwy station, 5¼ miles from Llangollen, and the first trains here just over a year ago, Easter 1992. The achievement by Llangollen Railway volunteers here was quite significant. The line between Deeside Holt, the previous terminus, and Glyndubwy, the present one, 1¾ miles, was laid in 20 weekends flat by the volunteers, which is quite some record in track laying, considering that this was all done manually without any resort to sophisticated hydraulic equipment. I'm standing in Glyndubwy station signal box, this little 21 lever frame signal box which was previously located at Leeton on the Shrewsbury-Chester line just outside of Shrewsbury. This was the first sign of the railway returning to Glyndubwy. This box was installed here in 1988 and stood sentinel-like, really waiting for the rails to come from Deeside and from Berwyn. The station here was formally opened in Easter last year, Easter 1992. The area between the platforms was a children's playground until the railway reopened it. It was a grassed area with swings and slides and what have you. When the playground was excavated, a lot of the bricks which had been used in the original platform and which had been demolished were rediscovered and used to construct the up platform here on this side. And the station building that you can see through the window there was previously in use as an engineman's signing on cabin at Northwich Loco Shed. The big wheel which you can see here is non-runner at the moment. Eventually it will be connected up to the level crossing gates which came from Rossett, also on the Chester-Shrewsbury line. Here we are on Glyndubwy platform, and the rails disappear out of sight just around the corner there. And that is the limit of the run from Llangollen now, 5¼ miles. Ultimately, the railway will virtually double in its length to Carrog and ultimately to Corwin, which will be the final destination of the railway by 1995-1996. In sight most immediately is the 2-mile extension to Carrog, which will be financed from money raised by the railway's public share issue, which was launched on March the 1st, St David's Day. And which here we are at just about the beginning of April, and the railway has already raised over £150,000 towards financing that project. It's not all beer and skittles at Llangollen Railway. This railway has not been exempt from the effects of recession. Last year 3 members of staff were made redundant. It's a very finely balanced piece of arithmetic for any operating railway these days, and Llangollen has to play by those rules. But Llangollen does have a lot going for it. There is terrific enthusiasm amongst the volunteers. There is a great pioneering spirit in getting the railway to Carrog and ultimately to Corwin, where the Great Western Railway terminus will be established.
Open landscapes and magnificent scenery. A Pacific working flat out. Only the Settle and Carlisle can offer such limitless photographic potential. The straight section of line out of Rise Hill Tunnel allows some fine telephoto views from the embankment near Dent Station. A rare burst of spring sunshine greets Duchess of Hamilton on a Carlisle to Bradford working. Sunshine is, unfortunately, a rather rare commodity on the S&C in early spring. The perfect combination of 6201 and maroon coaches is somewhat spoiled by the 47 at the rear. This was added to provide coach heat. From the Settle and Carlisle to the Scarborough line, Blue Peter and its Mark I coaches could just as easily have been taken in the 1960s. On the other side of the country, to the south and east, to a classic steam location, the long 1 in 95 grade to the summit north of Abergavenny. And now, the perfect combination. The Drummond T9 and 2 southern coaches in the Purbeck Hills in clear spring sunshine. Cameraman was not, of course, alone. One or two others seem to have spotted the potential of this particular vantage point.